To today's media conference hosted by the CARICOM Election Observation Mission to the 2025 Jamaica General Parliamentary Elections. Let me on the outset state that the media is a highly valued stakeholder group, so we thank you for taking the time at very short notice to be with us today. I am Brian Belvey. I am the Program Manager for Foreign and Community Relations at the CARICOM Secretariat and head of the mission support team, and I'll be moderating this afternoon's session. I am pleased to introduce, to my right, the Chief of Mission, Ms. Fern Narcis, who is Chief Elections Officer of Trinidad and Tobago. Ms. Narcis has served on several previous CARICOM observation missions, two previously as Chief of Mission. Ms. Narcis will now provide you with further information on the observations undertaken by the CARICOM observation mission team. I invite Ms. Narcis to the podium. Thank you.
At the invitation of the Chairman of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, deployed an 11-member CARICOM Election Observation Mission to observe the General Parliamentary Elections of Jamaica on 3rd September 2025. The team arrived in Jamaica over the period 27th to 31st August. The objective of the CEOM is to observe the preparations for and conduct of elections in order to provide an impartial, independent, and honest assessment of the electoral process. This includes consideration of all factors that could impact the credibility and transparency of the elections. Pre-election activities and stakeholder engagement. Prior to polling day, the mission conducted several meetings with key stakeholders to understand the country's political climate. The mission met with Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holness, Prime Minister of Jamaica and leader of the Jamaica Labour Party, the Honorable Mark Golding, leader of the opposition People's National Party, the Honorable Earl Jarrett, Chairman of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, Mr. Glasspool Brown, Director of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, Mr. Warren Clark, Deputy Commissioner of Police, and Bishop the Reverend Christine Bengoshe of the Jamaica Council of Churches, together with Reverend Courtney Gordon and members of the Jamaica United Group of Churches. Polling day observations. On polling day, 6 teams were deployed to observe in 36 constituencies across 12 parishes. The teams visited 260 polling stations and monitored the day's activities by observing the opening of the poll, the voting process, the closing of the poll, and the counting of ballots. The mission noted that all materials and supplies needed were present at the stations in the required quantities. For the most part, polling stations were opened on time and voting commenced promptly at 7 a.m. at the stations in which the opening was observed. All stations were fully staffed and most had representatives of the political parties contesting in the various constituencies. The teams noted that representatives of the 2 major political parties were present in all areas observed. Polling stations were also conveniently located and accessible to the electorate. Adequate security was in place at all locations, with the officers displaying a very professional approach, which contributed to the level of calm that accompanied the day's activities. Throughout the day, the poll workers remained resolute and steadily carried out the required procedures, ensuring that the electors who turned out were able to register their vote. The mission observed that the electronic voter identification system, also known as EVIS machines, generally performed effectively throughout polling stations were deployed. While in some stations there were technical issues, the EOJ's contingency planning appeared to ensure continuity in operations, enabling voters to exercise their franchise without impediment. Election center operations. As Chief of Mission, I also had the opportunity to visit the election center of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica on polling day. The mission observed that the center functioned effectively as a central hub for monitoring electoral operations nationwide. The atmosphere reflected a high level of collaboration and cooperation between the Electoral Office of Jamaica and the wide range of stakeholders present, including representatives of the security forces, political parties, and civil society. Issues raised throughout the day were addressed in a timely and coordinated manner, demonstrating the ECJ's commitment to transparency, responsiveness, and the smooth conduct of the electoral process. Overall assessment and conclusion. The mission's general assessment of the day's activities is that the voters were able to cast their ballots without intimidation or harassment, and that the results of the general elections of 3rd September 2025 reflected the will of the people of Jamaica and reinforced their commitment to the democratic process. Congratulations are heartily extended to the hardworking and dedicated staff of the Electoral Commission of Jamaica, the poll workers, the political parties and their candidates, the security forces, and the people of Jamaica for the mature way in which the elections were conducted and the high level of discipline displayed throughout the process. Jamaicans must indeed be commended for the conduct of a peaceful elections process. The mission's full report will be prepared and submitted to the Secretary General of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, Dr. Carla Barnett. This report will include the findings of the mission and its recommendations and suggestions for continued strengthening of the electoral process in Jamaica. The CARICOM Election Observation Mission wishes to thank the leaders of the political parties, civil society groups, other stakeholders, the media, and the people of Jamaica for their warm welcome and cooperation, which contributed to the success of this endeavor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Narcis. Now open the floor to questions. But before asking a question, could you state your name and the media house that you're representing? Yes, sir.
Gerald Williams from the Jamaica Observer. Yesterday there were several reports that at some polling stations lines were moving very slow and there were voters who were frustrated. I'm just trying to clarify, based on the polling stations that the observers went to, I didn't really hear if there was any of that observed. So I want to clarify if you guys did not actually see that same thing when you went to those polling stations.
Okay, so we did see in a few polling stations some long queues, but just to share that long queues are typical in the Caribbean elections, particularly in the morning period. But I must say that I did find that the staff, the poll day staff, were able over time to deal with those queues and persons were able to exercise their franchise. So they were noticed, and we will mention that in greater detail in the report.
Next question. Mr. Lady at the back.
I have not heard or have any such reports, so I can't really, I don't think we're able to comment on that at this time.
Based on your process, that is something that you
I wouldn't want to comment on that, but I will say that the observers, those of us in the team, we did not observe any such happenings in the stations that we visited.
prior to coming to Jamaica, was there anything that you were looking for, consumable, and which other
Jamaica, I don't know if the Jamaican populace is aware, but Jamaica is leading the region in a number of reforms, particularly in relation to registration of political parties and campaign financing. The introduction of the EVIS machine as well, we were aware of that, and so we were keen to look at that and see how that would have operated on poll day. And of course, the election center, something else that is quite attractive to a number of other Caribbean countries in terms of how that operates. So there are a number of features in your process that quite highly commendable, and they work very well, and certainly we were all very excited to see those types of organizations and how they operated.
Can you share a concerning recommendation?
Not at this time. All the recommendations would be placed in the report, and of course the report will be made available in a few weeks to come.
Any other questions?
Sure.
There was an incident where one of the candidates was asked to leave at the government. However, I think they're allowed about 5 minutes or so to stay on to see what's happening in the election process. Now, how do you think that incidents of this nature should be treated going forward?
Well, I would say that typically in the Representation of the People Act, there would be guidelines as to how long candidates can stay within the precincts of a polling station. And certainly once candidates and their agents are made aware of what those guidelines are, usually there's a collaboration between the political parties and their representatives and the commission and the poll day staff as to how that is implemented. So I did hear that there was such an issue, but I also understand that issue was resolved with the intervention of, I think either is the returning officer or something like that, the presiding officer. The matter was resolved, so that the knowledge was there. So these things do tend to happen, but again, minor irregularities common to a voting process, but once things are quickly addressed, that is what really speaks to the success of the conduct of the poll.
Any more questions? Well, it doesn't seem like there are any more questions, so I would just like to say thank you. We realize that this media briefing was called at a very short notice, so we greatly appreciate your attendance, and we very much look forward to reading your reports. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you.